his young age, that's pretty good bit of dedication on Brother Wayne's part to be back this fast. So we appreciate him, and so anyway, if you have your Bible, we're going to turn back to Genesis chapter number 35. Go back to Genesis chapter number 35. Oh, by the way, Brother Wayne, your ankle bracelet is up here, so make sure Miss Anita gets it for you before you leave this afternoon. I know you've been missing it. So yes, sir. So Genesis chapter number 35. So, Riggs, good to have you in Sunday school class this morning. You win the prize for youngest one in Sunday school this morning. So, we were in Genesis chapter number 35 last week. I spent a lot of time running through between Genesis 28 and up to Genesis 35, and then just spent about 10 minutes, and I kind of focused in on one thing last week. But I want us to kind of drill down into this chapter this week. And so I'm going to read a decent amount of verses this morning, and then we'll get into it. In Genesis 35, verse number 1, it says, "And God said unto Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar, and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him, when he fled from the face of his brother. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Elon Bakuth. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padanaram, and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall thy name be called. And he called his name Israel. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be out of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abraham unto Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake unto him Bethel. I'm going to read a couple verses right here just because I want them in context later. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, and Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, before she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died, and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. So I'll stop reading right there. So again, we've been looking for the last few weeks, and the thing I want us to focus on is the word Bethel, and the house of God. And so we're going, Lord willing, we're going to continue in this. There's much more in the word Bethel, or in the history throughout the Bible, where very important things happened at this place called Bethel. And so, Lord willing, we're going to continue to focus on that. And so we've probably got 3 or 4 more lessons on it, but just not here. But in this passage right here, if you remember when Jacob first came out, and again, it actually mentioned it here, how that he was in fear for his life for Esau. And that first night out, God appeared to him in Bethel, and he said, God was in this place and I knew it not. And so he called it Bethel, the house of God. And then as Jacob is coming back, from going into his mother, where his mother was from, going into his mother's land, as he's coming back from there, he wrestles with that angel, not at Bethel, but at Penuel, and he wrestles with that angel right there. And so you see in Jacob's life that he has to get into a distress, or he gets into a distress, and that's when he seeks God. And so 3 separate times, the first time when he left Esau, when he left because of Esau, the second time when he's returning and he's going to have to face Esau, and now this time, if you remember from the previous chapter, which we just mentioned in passing, but what happened to the people of Shechem because of what they did to Dinah. And so Simeon and Levi went and slew all the men of Shechem. And so now here is Jacob, and he's in distress again. And I read it to you. I read it to you last week, and I'll read it again. It says, "And Jacob said unto Simeon and Levi, Ye have troubled me, to make me stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house." Now, it is interesting to me, and it's funny because sometimes we have moments where we exude great faith, and then we have other moments where we have opportunities to exude faith, and we don't do it at all. And so here is Jacob, and God has promised to be with him, and God has promised to bless him, and God has blessed him. If you remember how that he basically went out, he went out empty, and he comes back with at the time when he's coming back from Laban's house, he comes back with 12 children, and he comes back with cattle and sheep, and he comes back with all these things that God has blessed him with. And when he sees Esau, he's like, "Hey, take the gift that I'm offering you, because God has really blessed me." And he's got all those things, and then and he has that wrestling match with God, and God changes his name and says, "Hey, you're a prince with God. I'm changing your name to Israel. You are a prince with God." But here in this moment, he forgets that he's a prince with God, and he's just fearful. And a lot of times that we have an opportunity to show faith in God, we just show fear. We don't say, "Hey, God, you've handled this situation in my life before. God, you can handle it now. God, I've come up against things I faced before, and look at how I've come through them. God, I trust you here." But that's not what he does. He says, "Look," he said, "they're going to destroy me and my house." And those boys said unto him, "Should he deal with our sisters as with a harlot?" They wasn't thinking about God. They were just mad about what Shechem had done to their sister. And so he's now in a distress again, and this time God comes to him, and it says in chapter 35, verse number 1, "And God said unto Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel." Now, from chapter 28, and I'll just read it again. In chapter number 28, the very end of the chapter, verse number 20. It says, "And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat, and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee." So we're close to, not quite, but we're close to 30 years from that vow. And God said, "Hey, I'm calling the note. The note's due. It's time for you to come back to this place and be reminded that I'm the same God 28 years ago or 29 years ago. I'm the same God that took care of you that day when you walked out. I'm the same God that can take care of you this day when you're in fear." And so God tells him, he said, "Hey, I need you to go back to Bethel. Go back to the house of God. Go back to that place." And And it's funny because sometimes a lot of people, they don't ever think about church until they get in distress. They don't ever think about church. They don't ever think about, maybe they went when they was a little kid. Maybe they went to Sunday school or something like that. But then they just grew up and they just kind of, they feel like they've aged out of church or whatever. And that's not, that's not a real thing. You shouldn't ever age out of church. But sometimes people just feel that way. They're just like, I don't need that in my life right now. And then they get to working and they get to doing this and they buy cars and they buy houses and they have kids and everything's going good. And then as soon as some distress comes in their life, they're like, oh, maybe I need the church. Maybe I need the house of God. Maybe I need the people of God. Maybe I need the God of the house, which is what Jacob's going to call this place. He's going to say El Bethel, the God of the house. And so sometimes, and it's unfortunate because it shouldn't be this way, but even in our lives, I think a lot of times we take the church for granted. I think we take it for granted. We come Sunday morning, we come Sunday night, we come Wednesday night. If we have a revival meeting, we're here Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, sometimes Friday night. We got camp meeting coming up in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks, or maybe right at 2 weeks. We got camp meeting coming up, and we're going to be there. We're going to be there Monday night, and Tuesday morning, Tuesday night. We're going to be there, and it's just what we do. It's just what you do. You just get up and you go. You come to Sunday school, and you sit in Sunday school for 45 minutes, and then church, and we're here for an hour and a half for church, and then we go home, and then we rinse, cycle, and repeat. But every once in a while, you come in, and you just need something. You come in and you need a word from God. You come in and you need God to say something to you. You come in, why? Because God has had to put you in distress. It shouldn't have to be that way. We should come in with our hearts prepared. We should come in with our hearts ready to meet and ready to worship and ready to hear. But a lot of times that's not how we do. Again, you come in on Wednesday night, for most of us, we've worked all day. You've worked all day, and you've either created problems or solved problems all day at work, and you come in and you're still thinking about work, and you see the guys you work at, and Silver and Bub have been in an argument all day at work, so Silver and Bub are at each other, and Ben and Paul have been in an argument at work, and so Ben and Paul are at each other, and they're trying to sit down, they're trying to have church, but they're like, there's that Ben, I wish he go somewhere else where I don't have to see him. That kind of stuff happens. It just happens. And you go through a whole church service, and you get out and you leave, and the next day, if Ben looked at Paul and said, hey, what preacher preached on last night? I think it was something about Titus. Why? Because he's been preaching on Titus for 4 or 5 weeks now. I think it was something about Titus. And that's all you got in service. That's all you got. And sometimes for me, I'm sitting up there in the sound room and I got the live stream going, and every once in a while, I don't know what happens to it, but every once in a while, I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi here or the internet here, but every once in a while, the live stream just goes bonkers, Justin. It's just up there, and all of a sudden it starts scrolling, or it starts slow, it starts doing this thing, and it's just distracting. And so I know there's certain people that watch, and they're going to text me and say, hey, we got a problem with the live stream. I'm like, I want to be like Elisha when Elijah was going off the scene. Yeah, I know it. Hold your peace. But anyway, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, thank you for making me aware of that. But I got the live stream going on. I got stuff going on, and sometimes like someone doesn't they don't turn their mic on, so then everyone's looking at me like we can't hear that person, and it's like because they don't have their mic on, and you're like, I wish they would have turned their mic on, and you just get distracted. Jacob had just gotten distracted. It'd been 8 years. It'd been about 8 years that he'd been back in the land, but he had not returned to Bethel. And God said, it's time. It's time for you to get up and go to Bethel. And he says something to him that I'll ask a question later, but he says, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. And we understand that they lived in tents. They didn't have houses. They didn't have houses. They lived in tents, and so they were somewhat nomadic. And obviously, they had sheep and cattle and oxen, and they had all those things. And so, depending on how the feed was, they kind of they had to at least have land for them to graze on and everything. But God said, "Go up there and dwell there." He said, "I want you to go there, and I want you to stay there for a while. Don't just go up, get the help you need, and go away." And back to church. That's what people do a lot of times. They come in, they get them a little bit of religion, whatever their problem was. I'm not gonna say everyone in here can think about whatever their problems are, and say, "Well, this is why I'm here. I'm here because of this. I'm here because of that. I came because I had this going on in my life." And as soon as that little stress is off your life, I'm good. And then they don't show up on Wednesday night. Then they don't come on Sunday night. Then they hit every other Sunday morning. Then they're like, "I don't need Sunday school." Before long, they're back out of church again. God said, "Jacob, I want you to go up there. I want you to go up to the house of God, but I don't want you to just swing in and swing out. I want you to dwell there. I want you to plant roots. I want you to establish yourself there. I want you to dwell there. I want you to anchor in there." Again, we got construction guys here. Luke's here, and a bunch of these guys are construction guys. And even in my industry, we use the wedge anchors. And so if you have a big receiver tank, it's going to have, it may be a small one, it's going to be 240 gallons. A large one may be a couple thousand gallons. And all that's holding that thing in place, it used to be everyone had steel pipe and it was threaded, but all that's holding that in place is 3 or 4 wedge anchors. Because now everyone has aluminum pipe. Well, aluminum pipe is nice, but it's not threaded together like steel pipe was. So we had a guy up here in Jasper, and the technician that went out there at the time said, "Hey, you need to anchor that tank down." They didn't anchor the tank down. Well, Brother Tyrone, the pipe blew apart. Well, when it did, you had, I think it was about a 400-gallon tank. It was about a 400-gallon tank, and when the pipe blew apart, it had 400 gallons of storage, but it was pumped up to about 150 pounds of pressure. And they said that thing slid across their concrete and hit against the wall because it wasn't anchored in. And so this storm is not going to be the last storm in Jacob's life. It's not. It's not going to be the last storm. That's why I read the last couple of verses. And there's so much more that's coming. It's not the last storm. So God said, "Jacob, you need to go to Bethel. And you need to dwell there. You need to get anchored in there, because this storm that you're facing with Shechem and your fear because of what happened, that's not going to be your last storm. And so if you don't go somewhere and you don't dwell there, if you don't set down roots there, if you don't anchor in there, there's more storms coming. And you're just going to be lost like you are now." So God says, "I want you to go there, and I want you to dwell there. But not only dwell there, but he said, I want you to make an altar there unto God." It's funny that God said, "Make it unto me." But the reason he had to say that was because his wife had a strange god. Some of the people that were probably working for him had a strange god. Some of the people that his 2 sons had just taken captive, they were going to have their strange gods. And so we looked at that last week, but he said, I want you to make an altar unto God. It's time, Jacob, it's time for the people in your family to know once and for all who's the God that you serve. Not just that we serve a God, or everyone have your gods, but no, it's time for you, Jacob, to say, this is the God that we serve. And he reminds him, he said, do you remember that, he said, make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. He said, if you remember, Jacob, you made me a promise all those years ago. And I kept my part of the bargain. Have you kept yours? I kept my part. You had more than food. You had more than raiment. Just look around, Jacob. You've got 12 kids and about to have 13 because your wife's pregnant. You've got 12 kids. You've got cattle. You've got sheep. You've got oxen. You've got all this wealth. I kept my part. You came home. We know he came home because he has his mother's nurse. You came home. I kept my part. And a lot of times, like I said, you come into the house of God. You come into the house of God, and you're in distress, and you come to the altar, and you're like, God, if I can just get this off of me, I'll serve you. And probably you're well-intentioned when you say that. Probably in your heart, you're well-intentioned when you say that. My question to you is, have you said that and not kept that? Again, men's home guys, I appreciate you guys here. But you see, of all the people that have come through the men's home, and again, some of y'all don't live here, so I understand. Go back to where you're from. Go back to where you're from. If that's what God wants for you, go back to where you're from. But you need to find you a church. You need to find you a Bethel and anchor into that church. And not just say, man, I was here 6 months, 9 months, I was here however long the program went. I got the help I need. I'm good. I'm going back out. You need to find you a church. If you're from here, we've cared for you. Aspen's cared for you. Brother Jamie's cared for you. Brother Dakota's cared for you. If y'all work with Bub's cared for y'all. If you work with someone else, they've cared for y'all. Take the opportunity to anchor in here. Bring your family here. Bring your family here. In verse number 2, he says, Then Jacob said unto his household, and all that were with him, put away the strange gods. You know what Jacob said? He said, there's some things in this house that I've just let go on. And I'm not going to hammer on cell phones this week. I hammered on them last week. I'm not going to do it. Every person in here, if I said, what's the strange God in your hand? What's the strange God that you've allowed to draw you away from God? That you've allowed to take up your time, that you've allowed to take you away, that you're no longer focusing on God because you've got this in your life. And maybe you don't bow down to it. Maybe you don't pray to it. But you know it's probably more important in your life than it should be. It's probably a whole lot more important in your life than what it should be. And I will say this, as a married man with children, God doesn't want anyone more important in my life than him. I'm a man that loves his wife. I love my children. But God doesn't want anyone in my life more important than him. My wife, I don't want my wife to love me more than she loves God. And the thing I understand is that if I love God like I'm supposed to, I'm also going to love my wife like I'm supposed to. If she loves God like she's supposed to, she's going to love me like I'm supposed to. If I love God like I'm supposed to, I'm going to love my children like I'm supposed to. And if my children love God like they're supposed to, they're going to respect and honor me like they're supposed to. So, again, sometimes you hear that and you're like, oh, wait a second. I love my family. And you should love your family. I'm not saying don't love your family. I'm saying don't make your family your God. Make God your God. Allow him to be your God. And then have your family. So again, he says, put away the strange gods that are among you and be clean and change your garments. He said, we look like the world. We smell like the world. We talk like the world. If anyone saw us, they wouldn't know we're any different from the world. As a it just happened in the previous chapter. They're like, hey, you guys, you're pretty much like us. What's the big deal? Like, you're pretty much like us. We know you're a little different, but just yoke up with us. We'll give our son your daughter. We'll give our daughters to your sons. Everybody will be happy. And that wasn't the case. It wasn't ever going to be the case. And it was not supposed to be the case because God said, that's not what I want. And so Jacob has to go to his house and say, hey, there's some things that I've let go on in here that need to stop today. And that's difficult, Matthew. I mean, sometimes, like I got, my youngest child has graduated. My youngest child is going to college. Like, I have adult children. And sometimes I have to, I'm not like Zach anymore. They're not little bitty kids. They're not little bitty kids running around. They're adult children. And I have to let them be adults, and I have to let them make decisions on their own. But every once in a while, I was like, hey, guys, it's my house, and this is how we're doing it in my house. This is our house, and this is how we're going to do it in our house. We're not going to have that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to say that. We're not going to go here. We're not going to... And they're adults, and I try to give them as much freedom as I can, but every once in a while, I was like, sorry, but this is my house. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to do that on your own, but you're not doing it here. And Jacob said, hey, he said, be clean, change your garments. He said, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God. I will say, it would be nice, Matthew, if you could make an altar, and again, it would be nice if you could get saved. If you could get saved for Ellie and Rhett and Sage and Riggs. But you can only make an altar for yourself. You can make an altar, and you can tell them, hey, you got to come down, and we're going to pray here. But a relationship with God is a personal relationship with God. It's a personal relationship. It's a relationship between you and God. And he said, I'm going to go down and I'm going to make an altar. And in that statement was, I'd like for you to meet and serve the same God that I serve. I haven't done a good job. I haven't done a good job with you guys. But here's an opportunity. God has given me another chance. God has given me an opportunity to say, hey, you can make this right. He said, I will make there an altar unto God who answered me in the day of my distress and was with me in the way which I went. He said, let me just testify for a minute. Maybe I haven't testified enough in my life. Maybe I haven't told you like how important God, how important Jehovah God is to me. Maybe I haven't told you that this is how God worked these things out in my life. Maybe I haven't told you that the reason why I asked you to start calling me Israel is because God changed my name. I didn't change that name. God changed that name. And the reason why that Jacob bothers me so much to be called by Jacob is because the person who Jacob was not a good person. He was a trickster, and he was a schemer, and he was a conniver, and he was doing things he shouldn't do. But God, I had that wrestling match with that angel, and God said, hey, I don't want you to be called Jacob anymore. I don't want you to identify as that person anymore. God changed my life, and now I am Israel. And so in verse 4 it says, and they gave unto Jacob. You know, it's funny because a lot of times we're very fearful. We're very fearful. Sometimes we're like, oh man, we tell ourselves stories. If I tell them we're going to do this, they're going to be upset. If I say, hey, I want you all to stop doing this, they're going to be really mad at me. Hey, if I say, hey, we're going to start going to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, they're going to be so upset. And then, Chris, look what happens. He says, and they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a fuss. There wasn't a hide it. They just gave it. Here, he's probably delayed this conversation for no doubt years. Again, we're 8 years, so Rachel's had her little God for 8 years. He's delayed that conversation because he dreaded what was going to happen. And they just willingly just said, here, you can have it. You can have it. It's been bothering me. It's been bothering me that I have it. I've been holding on to this thing, and now that you talk about this God that delivered you in your day of distress, and you've testified to what all God did for you, why would I serve this little G God that has been carved out of wood, that's never done anything for me, when I can serve Jehovah God that came down and met you in all of your days of distress? And they just gave it. And again, like I said, sometimes the biggest part is just getting over the fear for asking for it. Sometimes they've been fretting over it anyway. They've been praying about it anyway, and they just needed you to say, hey, I need you to give that to me. And they just willingly give it. Doesn't always work out that way. But they were prepared. They were preparing their hearts to go to Bethel, just like Jacob was preparing his heart to go to Bethel. And the earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak, which was by Shechem. Verse number 5. Again, here is God delivering Jacob from the fear that he was under, and they journeyed. And the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So again, here is God saying, God putting fear in all these cities that said, hey, we're gonna fix Jacob and his sons for what he did to the Shechemites. And instead, God put fear in them, and they just let them walk right through the land, and were never bothered. Never bothered. If you remember, God told Laban, he said, hey, don't you speak either good or evil to him. Don't speak good or evil. And so God took care of that fear. In verse number 6, it says, so Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land that is Bethel, and he and all the people that were with him, and he built there an altar. So he comes back to that place, and obviously the Canaanites, they built a city. Now they're calling it Luz, but they built that city there now. But yet he comes to that place, and he can take them right to the place. He said, boys, you see this pillar? That used to be my pillow. That night I used that pillow that stone as a pillow. And that morning, after God had showed me the ladder in that dream, and God had promised to take care of me, God promised to take care of me, and I promised God something. And we're going to build an altar here. And we're going to talk to God here. And God's going to talk to us. It says, and called the place El Bethel, the God of the house. And again, so I want to make myself clear. Not every church is a church. Not every place that calls themselves church is a church. They may have that on the sign, but if God's not there, it's not a church. If the God of the house is not in the house, it's not a church. I remember we were selling the property. It was our property that when I first moved down here and went to church, I went to church up in Dalton, and we were selling that property on Abutment Road. And there's actually still a church there to this day. but it's in a very industrial section of Dalton. It's very industrial. Chris knows where it is. It's very industrial. Like everything around it is industrial, except for the places to eat and a gas station. It's very industrial. And so we were selling it, and we were going to move to where Brother Roberto and them are now. And so preacher wanted to move, and there was some ladies in there, and they fell in love with the building. And the church to them was just the building. And when we were selling the building, they got upset and didn't want to leave. And so, again, like I said, the church was stagnant there, and it was in a terrible spot. And I haven't checked on the new church that's there, but they loved the building. And we have a beautiful building here at Concord. The brick looks beautiful. The parking lot's paved. You walk inside here, you got the stained glass. Brother Tyrone, Brother Jamie did a beautiful job on the church covenant right there, making it look like the stained glass. I mean, the building is beautiful. The Parks family does a great job cleaning the church. The grounds, the Alegrias do a great job. But if God's not here, who cares about a building? But because God is here, it's a beautiful place. And so I appreciate again, the hardest thing to do, if you're talking in sports, you're talking anything, the hardest thing to do is follow a legend. And Brother Sammy was a legend. And Brother Randy has done a great job following in his footsteps. And a lot of times people sitting here like, we're going to change these things. As soon as he's gone, we're going to make these changes. We're going to change it. We're going to do it my way. And I appreciate Brother Pastor Sutherland, Brother Randy, whatever you're used to calling him. I appreciate how he's handled this church in the almost 6 years that he's been pastor of this church. I appreciate the fact that he still wants to honor Brother Sammy. He won't even take Brother Sammy's name off the sign out there. I appreciate those things because God was here when Brother Sammy was here, and God is here now. And so he built this altar. And then look what happens in verse number 8. It says, "But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak." So sometime Jacob had went back, or Israel had went back, and he went back to his house, and his mom was dead. And his father said, "Hey, I want you to take your mom's nurse." And I thought about the significance of that. And again, like I said, we try to honor everyone. There's some people around here. I mean, I know Miss Jimmy. She's been with her hip and everything, and then she fell again, so she hadn't been able to be here. And I see her once in a while, and it just tears her up that she's not able to be here. But there should be an honor to some of those old people that are older people that can talk. Hey, this is how it used to be. Like Isaac let Jacob have, and so if Jacob's kids never heard any stories about Jacob when he was little until that nurse came along. You know how it is. You're like, I don't talk about myself much. I don't tell a whole lot of stories. But Jacob's nurse come along, and all those kids and his wives got to hear stories about what was little Jacob like. Tell me how he grew up. Tell me about his mom. Tell me about his dad. Tell me about those things. And the nurse was honored by being allowed to be with Jacob. She got some use. Again, a lot of times people get older and they feel like they've lost their usefulness. And it was an opportunity for Isaac to say, "Here, you take her." And Jacob say, "Here, I've got some usefulness for you. I don't need you as a nurse. I just need you to sit around and be with my kids. Be with my wife. Be with my wives. And be with them." In verse number 9 it says, "And God appeared unto Jacob again." So now here is God honoring him because he appears unto him again. when he came out of Padan, and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. In verse number 11, it says, And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. Here's the interesting thought about that. He was done having kids, Brother Justin. His wife was pregnant with his last child. God says, be fruitful and multiply. Most of the time you think be fruitful and multiply, you think, same thing God told Adam and Eve. Be fruitful and multiply. Have a bunch of kids. But God was not just promising Jacob. God was giving this promise to the rest of those people that were with him. He wants you to be fruitful and multiply. Because again, once Benjamin's born, he's not having any more kids. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be out of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And so he promises, hey, this promise is not just for you, Jacob. Again, it was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now we're about to split off into 12. And so in verse number 13, it says, And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. And so now these young people came to Bethel, come to the house of God, and they've got rid of their strange gods, and they've got rid of the junk that's in their life. They've cleaned themselves up. They've changed their garments, and now they've seen God talk to their father. And the same God that talked to their father can talk to them. They just have to build that relationship. And what you're going to see later is one of them built that relationship. Joseph built that relationship. In verse number 14 it says, Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. So he set up another pillar. He said, look, we're going to set this up. And if any of them, and we understand that Jacob's about to get sold into bondage, and when he gets sold into bondage, eventually there's going to be a famine in the land, and they all go up there, and it's going to be a long time from the last time, from this time until the next time that some of the children of Israel are in Bethel. We understand that. But there was a pillar there that Jacob said, hey, I'm going to set this stone up. I'm going to pour this drink offering. I'm going to pour this oil on this offering because I want you to know this was the house of God. It was, in verse 15, he says, And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel. So, the thing about this is God understood what Jacob was about to go through. Frankie, Jacob had no idea. He's probably thinking, I've lived most of my life and God's been good to me, and I'm just going to sit back and relax and enjoy my golden years. I'm just going to enjoy my golden years and watch my children and my grandchildren, and I'm just going to enjoy my life. And he had no idea and again, I said it earlier that God told him, and I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out. People that study the Bible maybe can figure this out. In verse number 1, he told him to dwell there. In verse number 16, it says they journeyed from Bethel. I don't ever see where God told him to go. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he should have went. Maybe he shouldn't have went. I don't know. But here's what I do know. He journeyed, and he hadn't made it very far from his journey before his wife went into labor. Again, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but God knew that Rachel, the love of his life, was about to die. God knew that Reuben, his firstborn, was going to betray him with one of Jacob's concubines. God knew that his father was about to die. And God knew that they were going to sell Joseph into slavery. And it was going to be 20 years, probably a little more, 20 plus years from the time that Joseph was sold into slavery until Jacob saw his face again and realized his son that he thought was dead was alive. And the thing that got Jacob through all of that was because he'd been to the house of God. Thank you.